2020 has been a challenging year. With the coronavirus, lots of fear and anxiety has hit many of us. Today, I'm going to offer 3 solutions on how to deal with fear. My guest today is Dr. Patrick Rutherford. Welcome, Dr. Rutherford. How are you today?
Pleasure to be with you.
All right. So we've talked a bit about the phone calls we've gotten, the people we have supported throughout this coronavirus, and we talked about solutions and the different ways we handle the people that we speak with and even how we manage our own fears and stresses throughout this time. So today, I wanted to hit those 3 topics with our audience. And the first one that we're going to be looking at would be acknowledging that fear. Thoughts?
Okay, so let's talk about what fear is to start with. Fear is a natural response of the human spirit in its effort to preserve itself. We all have a self-protecting mechanism. Anything that endangers our lives creates some sort of fear. The challenge is that some fears are just perceived. They're not real. And so to differentiate between a perceived fear and a real fear and to acknowledge that fear is a very, very important thing. So to not be in denial. Part of our self-protecting mechanism is denial, is to pretend as though what we're facing is not real, but it's still eating us up inside. Right. And we have reactions to it. So part of dealing with fear is facing the reality of fear that's a part of all of us. And once we face the reality that we have some amount of fear, then how we deal with it afterwards is important. There's some fear that's healthy. Fear of driving too fast and crashing, fear of your child being abducted, which cause you to be more protective and not be foolish in the way you allow them to run around on the street by themselves. Those are healthy fears. They help us to function well in society and to protect the people around us that are valuable and dear to us. So a life without fear is not a rational life, because the world is full of danger. And you mentioned a significant one just now, which is the coronavirus. That we are approaching 300,000 lives
right.
to be lost from this deadly disease. And other people are at home still trying to get over the effects of it that they have, and others are looking on and saying, wow. And there are side effects from that. Some people have lost their businesses and they're fearing right now, how am I going to survive? Others see their business teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, and that fear of this great loss is affecting them. So yes, we first are best able to deal with fear when we acknowledge that fear exists.
All right. So we've talked now about really what fear is. And some people don't believe that they have fear, but we can see their responses to that fear. And some of the responses that we see, I can say anger is one of those. Some people get withdrawn. Some people get overly talkative. There are different behaviors that people demonstrate. Different people respond differently. Tell me a little bit more in terms of what other behaviors that you may have seen or experienced just from talking to people or just growing up in your professional life. What other habits do you see people push forward when they come across
so some
fear?
some people practice what they call avoidance. So the fear of failure, for example, will cause a person not to go for the promotion, not to seek that next job, not to even look out at the company they're working for a job somewhere else, because they're found a cush little spot there. They have all this energy inside of them that they want to fulfill, but fear says, you make that move, you're going to fail. And and so it inhibits them, the fear of failure. Some people fear success. And you say, how could somebody fear success? Well, if you have someone who does not know how to deal with notoriety and publicity and who don't like attention, success is an awful thing to deal with, because with success oftentimes come that kind of attention, and they don't know how to deal with it. So some people practice what we call self-sabotage.
Right.
To keep from getting to that place where they can have to deal with the other fears that they have that they won't deal with, they haven't been dealing with before. Okay. So there are a lot of factors for different people in different circumstances that affect them. There are perceptions that people have about other people and how other people perceive them. Okay, and those fears feed into how we relate to each other. If for example, for individuals who have been put down, who have been made to feel small, then as soon as they get into a situation where they feel like, these people may not like me, or this person is asking me to do this, is to make me look bad or to put me down, their defense mechanisms come up, and sometimes anger is one of those defense mechanisms,
right,
that they use to deal with the situation. And we'll talk about anger as a control mechanism later on, but here we see fear produces anger, and anger produces fear, because when a person is exhibiting anger, they're actually trying to get the other person to be afraid of them. And sometimes they do succeed in getting people to be afraid of them. And so you might be in an office and there are certain people that you don't want to ask to do anything. Because the reaction, I'm not sure I can handle that reaction from this person if I ask them to do anything. So although it is their duty and their responsibility to carry out that function, because their fear has driven them to use anger to protect themselves, the rest of us are afraid to approach them to do what they're supposed to do. So it really creates up some significant dysfunctionalities in society. Fear.
Yeah. So fear is one of those things that not only control the individual that is fearful, but they also use it to control others, which is very complex and very dangerous sometimes. And we see different behaviors, and as we see people around us and they act in ways that we don't understand, sometimes their behaviors are driven by fear. And so the next point I want to look at is putting this fear into perspective, because many people around us, we don't understand their behaviors. And that is because they're misaligned with reality.
Yes. So we talked about acknowledging fear, that all of us have some kind of fear or other, and if we see our behavior being skewed, say, why did I react that way in that circumstance? Maybe just because of fear. Why was I afraid? And so acknowledging the fear and identifying if it's a rational fear or an irrational fear is very important. If you're in a situation where there is imminent physical danger, that there's somebody who is abusive in the environment, and you feel afraid, that's genuine fear. That's no foolishness. And so what you do in that circumstance is you take the appropriate action to protect yourself, whether it's remove yourself from the circumstance, or you call the police, or you get somebody who is in authority to intervene in the situation. So it's important to recognize when you're really in danger, because people who deny that they're in danger often get hurt because they fail to take the appropriate action to protect themselves and to protect other people around them. Then when we come to irrational fear now, we a lot of us, okay, so my irrational fear was the fear of the dark. Okay, as a child growing up, we we used to sit around at night and tell what we call duppy stories, ghost stories. Okay, and by the time you get to bed, all these things going through your head, and if a tree brushes against the house outside, you hear the sound, you know it's the boogeyman coming, and you're afraid, and the darkness just kind of adds to that. And so I developed this fear of the dark. I just want to be in my bed and covered up. If it's dark and I don't want to pull the cover from over my head to just open my eyes and see darkness. It was a frightful thing, and one is it, but wait, it's irrational. Who is in the room but you? There's nobody else in the room. One, number two, I'm a man of faith. I believe in God. I believe that God loves me and that He's protecting me. So why do I think that God is not greater than the darkness that I fear? And so having identified that this fear of the dark was an irrational fear, I then could position myself to find a way to overcome this fear of the dark.
Right. Can I share with you what my fear is? You probably already know. So a few years ago, when I needed to go live on Facebook, and I realized that it was very uncomfortable for me looking at myself in the video. And I peeled back and I'm like, what is this? I've been on the stage, I've given talks before, I've ran different programs, been in the boardroom, and it doesn't matter if someone's videotaping me, I didn't care. But just the fright of seeing my face and talking to myself, I was so uncomfortable, I wouldn't do it. And so I decided that whatever I'm uncomfortable about, I am going to push beyond it until I become the best at it. And so I laid out this whole track of, I'm going to do it until I get to my YouTube videos, which is where I am today. You know, it was not realistic. It's not reality. I peeled back to see where that was coming from, and I moved beyond it. So some self-help there, right? So pushing beyond that fear. So that's funny that we're talking about this on video today. All right. So the next step is get help. And I want to kind of encircle in this get help piece with the pandemic, because I've gotten phone calls from people and dealt with people that I coach that are literally fearful of something that's real, the pandemic. And so we're facing real challenges with this because people are getting sick, people are dying, and people are losing their health, their finances, their emotional, their mental. They're just using their health in general. We have no social life anymore from a touchy-feely type of thing. It's all virtual. And those of us that are very outgoing, that's very difficult. So there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of emotional fear that we are facing within this pandemic. And so getting help, I'd like to talk about those solutions that we're having a real situation here. I have literally had people call me and say, I'm fearful, I don't know what to do.
Okay, so the pandemic has within it a very real potential of killing people. I mean, it's killed a lot of people already.
Right.
And the greatest fear we have is the fear of the unknown. And death is the biggest unknown. Okay, so it makes sense that there is associated with this some fear, and for some people, significant fear. I have no pat answer for people whose faith has not gone beyond the consciousness that one day we are going to die. Okay, so being afraid of dying is not going to keep you from dying.
Right.
It's a reality we have to face. Okay, we don't want to hasten it, and we want to be comfortable with the reality. And I will share with you quickly how I overcame the fear of dying. When I pastored full time, I did many funerals, and seeing caskets and burying people was just ordinary stuff for me. It was not a big deal. As a child, I was afraid of seeing the casket and seeing the body inside of it. For a number of years, I worked outside of ministry, pastoral ministry, and I was not involved in funerals, period, for a number of years. Nobody around me died. I didn't have to go to a funeral. And then somebody very close to me died, and I had to go to a funeral. It was actually a viewing, and it was just a few select people invited to this viewing, and I was privileged to be one of those people that their family felt could minister to them during this. And I said, how am I going to face this casket and this body and this casket? The fear of death came up before me, and I had a serious talk with God. And I had to face the reality of my own mortality, because that is what I was not facing. That one day I'm going to die.
Right.
And if I walk around being afraid of death, I stifle my ability to live to the fullest.
Yes, indeed.
And so I braved myself, and with God by my side, I walked in that room. I walked over to the casket, and I looked at the casket, and I pictured myself lying there, my mortal remains. And I said, God, I acknowledge now that one day I'm going to die. And people are going to stand around my mortal remains, just like I'm standing beside the mortal remains of my dear departed church brother here. And help me just deal with that. And ever since then, every funeral I've gone to, I have gone and looked at the body and picture myself lying there.
Okay.
That is, yeah.
Now, death is final, but I think that one of the issues that folks are having is the suffering and dying alone. And that's really part of the issue because of the way the coronavirus just came up on a sudden. It was not expected. Our lives this year has just been so different. I haven't been to church since February. I've done it online, but I haven't seen the brethren at all. I haven't been able to interact with them. And for me, I'm okay being a loner, and I'm okay being the what they call the light of the party. But what about those that don't like being alone? What can they do? Because we're trying to say you need to get help. So for those that don't like being alone and they're stuck at home, maybe even with people that they don't like, or people that they don't want to be around in circumstances that they'd rather not be in, losing their jobs, having no security, what do we say? What help can we give?
First thing, don't go crazy in the sense of a denial that says, I don't have to deal with this. It's not happening. I'm not going to wear any mask. I'm going to go out and party and do whatever I used to do before because, that's how some people cope with it. Okay, they say it's not as bad, and they deny the fact that all these people are dying. So that's not the road to go down. This thing is real. If you have to go out, take the necessary precaution, wear your mask. Don't attend events where people are not wearing masks and where people are too close together and stuff like that. Protect yourself. Once you've taken those necessary precautions, and sometimes you mentioned there are people in our own homes that don't necessarily observe the protocols, and we fear that they may bring it to us. We may have to wear a mask around them to protect ourselves, and not associate too closely with them to protect ourselves. But ultimately, part of what helps us go through this struggle is the consciousness that this too will pass, that this is not going to last forever. Taking one day at a time. God, give me the grace to take it one day at a time. 1, 2, occupy yourself doing something positive. Call some people, talk to them, encourage somebody, read a passage of scripture for them, or give them a favorite quote of yours that will help make life meaningful for you, because you're blessing somebody else with your life. If you allow the fear to cripple you, then you will just shrink deeper and deeper, and maybe become depressed or over anxious, and your mental health fall apart. So to create some kind of activity, something to get a jigsaw puzzle, and fit those pieces together. If that's what does it for you. Learn to play music or something. Do something that's going to occupy your mind, so that you don't find yourself constantly just thinking about, am I going to get the virus? Am I going to suffer? And be conscious that if the vast majority of people who get this virus do not suffer. I believe I had a fairly mild case of it. Some temperature, some this and that and the other, and it's gone.
Right.
And some people don't even feel anything. Okay, so not everybody is going to die. Don't assume that you're the one that's going to die. Okay.
Right.
However, on the other hand, if you have underlying conditions that make you susceptible to suffering from it, then the wise thing to do is to make sure, if you're diabetic, take care of yourself in terms of managing your diabetes. If you are hypertensive, make sure you manage that. They did a study in Europe. It was released last week. My wife read the thing to me, and they did a study to figure out why did some people die as opposed to others.
Right.
So some diabetics died, some didn't. Some people with hypertension died, some didn't. And they did this study to figure out why did people die. And the vast majority of people who died were the people who were hopeless.
Aha. So
Okay.
what you're
So
saying
if you-
what you're saying to me here is that
Yes.
our mental and emotional health
Yes.
is really vital even during this time of coronavirus.
Hence, the way we manage our fear is critical to our even surviving the thing we fear.
Another light bulb that went on when you said that people deny the fact that the coronavirus is real and that they need the mask as a coping skill. And I have friends that are saying, I'm not going to live my life that way. I'm just going to go on and continue this way. But now now I understand why. It perhaps is just the reality that if they wear the mask and accept that, then they have to deal with that. Perhaps that's one reason is the thought that comes to me.
Denial of.
Right. So as we look at this fear, I want to put it in a little nugget in encouraging folks that if they want to talk to somebody, the different avenues they can go to get help. So we've talked about how to manage it emotionally, how to think about it. But in reality, some people actually need external help. And so there are avenues in which they can get a counselor, they can call a friend, they can get coaching, whatever therapy they need. We're locked in, and that makes it double whammy for us. It's very difficult. And so talk to me about that a little bit.
Okay, so one of the things about fear is that it keeps us from seeking information about the thing that we fear.
Aha.
The first thing is keep yourself informed. Don't close your mind away from the reality that this thing exists and it's in the environment. Okay, know what the caseload is in your state, what the exposure is for people. Understand what the symptoms are, because there are people who die from cancer, for example, because they're so afraid of cancer that they never investigate to find out what are the signs and symptoms of various cancers. And they're having these signs and symptoms, and they're in denial about it. Oh, it's just a little tummy ache, or it's a this or that and the other. And because they're not informed, by the time they find out that they have cancer, it's too late. It's stage 4.
Right.
It has metastasized. Okay, so it's important to become informed, but not become obsessed about it. Okay,
Right.
that's
Right.
why.
Right. So there's a
Number
balance.
two.
So there's a balance there without being informed and being obsessed. So I want to push the encouragement of helping folks understand to get external help. So we've looked at the identification of, just saying, acknowledge that you have fear and put it into perspective. Is it real? And then get help. And so we've given certain solutions as to how they can help themselves along emotionally, how to look at it, which ways they can practically say, well, this is a real fear, that is not a real fear, and how to manage it if it's realistic. Keep yourself safe, move away from certain circumstances. But the crux of the matter is, whatever it is that you fear, first thing, acknowledge it, whether it is reality or not. I would say talk it through with someone. Always find someone to talk to. For me, the first thing I do is I hit my knees. First thing I do anytime I have anything that is fear, I get on my knees first, because that's my go-to. For those of us that don't have that or don't see the need for that, talk to someone. Get help. We cannot manage this alone. It is a very difficult, we don't know how much time or how much more we have to really deal with this coronavirus issue. And the fear is unsurmounting when we see people's behaviors, we see their anger, we see the different types of attitudes that are coming out of it. And then comes the other conversation of who wants to take the vaccine or not. That's a whole other type of fear that is coming in. Mm-hmm. And even when we think about whether or not we should or should not take that vaccine, the strategy that we've outlined today still works. Yes. Acknowledge whether it's real or not. Are you fearful? And talk to someone. Talk it through, whether it be on your knees or whether it be a friend. It's good to really, manage that and have someone to help you to navigate through that. Because the reality is, if we don't manage our fears, it spirals downward to anxiety. Then it goes into depression. And so when we talk, right, and then when we talk about fear, right, and loss, because the death and the suffering is what we're doing, and people losing their jobs. And so, if you don't mind, I'd like to close off with just the 5 stages of loss for people to understand what they're going to go through. First is that shock, right? Mm-hmm. Wow. And I think many of us have gone through that shock stage of, well, coronavirus is there to stay, right? And then, you go through it, and in the middle of it, you're depressed. And then at the end of it, you accept it. So the faster you go through that is the faster you go through that. So talk to me a little bit about that before we close.
Okay. So the shock, then there's a denial. This is not real. Okay, this couldn't be happening to me. I'm not losing my business. I'm going to go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow morning and this thing is gone. But tomorrow morning you wake up and it's worse than your business is worse than the day before, and so you have to face the reality. Okay, and at some point in time you become angry, whether at the government or at God, for allowing this to come into your world, or maybe your workers, because they figure they could do better to help the business succeed or whatever, and the quicker we move from that anger to accepting the reality of what is really happening, then we can better deal with it. So we part of moving beyond the anger and the denial and the anger and the rage and stuff like that is to learn to forgive. If there are people really who are responsible, who didn't do their part to protect us, so we lost our job, or we lost our child, or we lost our grandparent, or whatever it is to free ourselves by forgiving, and that empowers us to move away from that. Then there's finding a way to be productive with the time that we have, and finding meaning and purpose in life. Our lives did not begin and end with a job or a business. There's life after that. It may seem not possible, but there's life after that. There's life after the death of a loved one. And we have to be able to put the pieces together and move on. One of the richness, and for me this is the final piece of this last puzzle, okay, is that having gone through the pain of loss, the fear, the anger, all the stuff that comes with the emotions of that, if we come out on the other side of it, having forgiven, having found peace, having found a richer purpose for our lives on the other side, we're in a better position to minister to others who are going through the same situation.
Absolutely. Correct. So you touched a little bit, we talked about the shock of going through it, then we talk about the denial, the anger, and then everybody goes through a certain level of depression, whether it's a 1 day, a 50-second, or go through that. And we hope that we don't stay there, right? We move quickly into acceptance. That's what we want to do. We want to move quickly from that shock to that acceptance so that we don't spiral downwards. And that's the message that I want to leave today. Get help so we don't spiral down into that level. So I am happy that I got to speak with you today again. It's been a few weeks and we've been just so busy, but we do have some more work to do. And I thank you for being with me today, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
A pleasure.
To learn more about holistic ways of managing your health and well-being, click the link below to subscribe and hit the bell so that you can be notified of my weekly videos. To continue watching, hit the link over here for the next video, and I'll see you in my next series. Thank you for watching.